Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 11th, 2023 Public Advisory Committee. Can we all please stand and salute the flag? Madam Clerk, would you please do a roll call of the members?
Councilor Novoselsky.
Novoselsky.
Yep.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here. We have one item on the agenda tonight. We're going to continue the discussion from the prior meeting. Ms. Julie DeMauro is going to lead the charge with that. And we're going to continue to talk on how we can assign different fees and group reservations and add some costs to the usage of the EV charge stations.
Okay, so so going back from the meeting we had in April regarding the usage of the different stations, we actually have now 2 full fiscal years completed where we can actually compare data. And what I did was the sheet that you have here before you, it has all of the usage for FY23, so that's July 1st of 2022 to June 30th, 2023. So that's our fiscal year. What we did see was a real increase in usage from FY22 to FY23. So I think I figured this out right, but an increase in energy dispense with over 100%, increase in public sessions was also over 100%, and an increase in municipal sessions is up by 41%. So that's, I was able to break out the 2 different users, but even our own parking engineering vehicles that use the stations are also increased, and that could also be that you might have more staff out there parking and out there a little bit longer to enforce the different types of parking that we have out that they need to enforce. I know we've talked a lot about assigning a fee. I did some research. I looked around at some other communities. I looked to see if they had any type of EV charging policies in their ordinances. At this time, none of them did have a fee. They did have public meetings, public sessions about how to determine the best use of a fee. I feel at this time we should really consider a flex pricing by station location, because the last meeting, our kilowatt price per station varied from 18 cents to 23 cents. But the flex pricing would also allow us to adjust the pricing based off of the increases or the decreases to the current utility rate. And what we could do is we can actually assign pricing rules per station. So the Hill School would have their own set of pricing rules. The Shirley Avenue stations would have their own set of pricing rules, as well as the City Hall lot. So what we could do is that if we wanted to, for example, Shirley Avenue lot is 23 cents a kilowatt, so we could tack on another, like a 10% upcharge. And then that would also allow for the fees to cover the fees that ChargePoint charges, which is a 10% increase in anything. They keep 10% of whatever we collect off the users. So I think that's something to consider. And then group reservations, we can allow for reservations to be reserved at the EVs, but I don't really think that's something that we need to consider at this time. They seem to turn over pretty quickly. And then rates and costs based off of the app, as I just mentioned, it's a 10% fee that they take from all monies collected from our users charging at the station. For example, so it's 33 cents times, so for the last month, we've dispensed 6.27 megawatts. So times 33 cents a kilowatt, that would result in $2,096.10. Less the 10, our net profit off of that would be $1,886.49. So these are notes that I've made today. When we look at the average time that the EVs or our users take to charge, it's usually 2 hours. I don't think we need anything more than that. That dispenses anywhere from 11 to 15 kilowatts during those 2 hours. So that would result in $4.09 to $4.95 based off the 33 kilowatt rate. I'm just giving some pricing examples. And then I think that we should really talk about, when we talk about enforcement, we can actually, time overage charges can actually be accessed right at the EV station. So you wouldn't have to have a parking clerk go around and check to see how long they've been. So after 2 hours, a fee would already automatically be assigned, whatever we set. And then in terms for employees' use, the biggest use that we see for employees is actually here in the City Hall parking lot. We're seeing a little mix of people parking and leaving the car there for a few hours and coming back. We see some employees just parking for 2 hours and then moving the car out of the spot. But we could look into setting maybe discounted pricing for the city employees or just charging them a flat fee. That's something that this group would have to decide upon. And then, as I said before, I don't think that we should allow for any more than 2 hours of charging. I think that's more than enough. And then lastly, if we decide we want to assess some fees to, the parking part of all this, so if you're parking in an EV spot, we would have to do some changes to Title 10, which is traffic. And that would include general provisions and definitions to include what is EV charging, EV vehicles, EV parking. Also, Chapter 10.32, just the parking fees and where that money would go, and then the penalties, what they would range about. Tom and I talked a little bit about this. We went back and forth. I think what would be really helpful for us is to kind of deploy some sort of a EV charger survey, and that's something we could do on public input. We can put it together quickly and just kind of get an idea of, one, how many EVs vehicles are registered here in the city, and two, what do people need for charging? And I think that's something that we need to kind of figure out. Like I said to Tom, if I had to charge up my car every night, it would be dead every morning because it would be one more thing that I would forget to do at night. So it's kind of like if you don't have a charger at your house or you don't have a charging station where you work, really, where are you charging up the car unless you have those two access points. But that's all I have for my report. I'm open to any questions. I'm happy to do some more research, but that's all I have for right now.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. So the city, is it our intent to, as the residents charge up, is it our intent to subsidize that cost a little bit and pick up some of the cost? Is it our intent to break even, or is it our intent to make a profit so it can go back into the maintenance of the stations? So I know you threw a lot of numbers out there, Julie, so I don't know that we should be subsidizing anybody's charging. It's a great thing to have for the public. I think we should be charging what it costs us, maybe with a little bit of a fee so we could go back into the maintenance of them. So is there any way to set the stations so it would charge what the current rate is?
Yes, so we can adjust the pricing every day, or we could say, well, we're gonna base the price off of last month's kilowatt charge, because it does fluctuate. The
Right.
rate of electricity does fluctuate. If
Would
I could get my
charge-
hands on
Right.
what is actually being billed out, I could set the rate, maybe this is the rate per week, or this is the rate
Okay.
per month. But I
Would
think we
ChargePoint do that for us, do that calculation, or
I
we would have to?
think they can. I think they can, but we still have the ability to set the rate per day, if that's
Okay.
something you want to do.
I don't know what our intent is. Is it,
Yeah, I mean, I want to just bring to, we had one EV station that got damaged, and it was $1,400 to fix, I believe. It wasn't covered under warranty.
Right.
I know Zach just re-upped your 2 years, 3 years for your, that was another 23. So there is some expense to this, even though a lot of this equipment we got free, the networking we got free. We really don't have much in the account to cover expenses like breakage and things like that. So I think that, yes, it should cover the cost to run these stations and then also the cost to fix them or renew subscriptions and things like that. I mean, I think a 10% upcharge based off whatever the kilowatt rate is more than enough. And what we do see is that, and the other thing about setting the pricing of all this. So say, for example, I decide I want to charge up and I plug in and I decide, and my car only needs 2 hours worth of charging, but I left the car there for 4 hours. I can set it so that every minute or every hour that they're not charging, I can assess a fee. So that all depends on what we want to do. And we do. We have some people that park here in the morning. They come around 2 o'clock. They remove the car. I don't think they're charging up all that time. I think they're probably just charging a little bit, and then, I'll come back and get it later. Later turns into 5 hours. I think that happens. But I think it's something we can consider.
Anything else? So I had one question. If we were going to charge for the kilowatts per hour and try to get the rebate back from that or repaid back for the usage, is there also a possibility of charging a flat fee to compensate for that 10% that ChargePoint is going to take from us? Because as it works now, for the total monthly cost, the city's liable for $296. That would have to go back to ChargePoint, where we would be stuck with the electric bill from that.
Right. So I was fooling around with the numbers a little bit, and I was like, well, let's just say if we just said, we're going to charge 35 cents a kilowatt, and that's going to cover all the stations. So, some of the stations the stations that we get charged 18 cents a kilowatt, we're going to make a little bit more off of that. Well, I don't want to say make, because I don't want to sound like we're trying to, but we're going to be able to make the system sustainable a little quicker. So that would give us a higher rate based off of all of the charging. And I don't know if I brought that figure down, but I think it comes down to we did 35, I didn't bring it down, but if we did 35 cents off of the kilowatt rate, we're looking at a little over $2,200 a month for the 1 month.
I certainly would be in support of a pricing model that looked to cover the costs of providing the electricity and provide a replacement reserve to make sure that we're maintaining these over time. I do think that I would also be in favor of having that pricing be dynamic to be able to adapt. For example, if we set a price that we feel is appropriate and we're seeing that we're not getting full utilization of the stations, particularly as we have folks in neighboring communities where it is still free. I do think there is a public good to, if we've created all these stations, to make sure that we're actually effectively utilizing them. And we should monitor utilization rates over time to see how our pricing impacts that. But again, with the core goal being to make sure we're covering costs of electricity, but then that replacement reserve, I think we just might need to be flexible on pricing according to the demand we get in.
Thank you. Mr. Viscay.
Quick question, might have covered this last meeting, but are we able to identify exactly what the electricity charges are for each of these stations with regard to, dollar figures as opposed to kilowatt hours? Because I think most people think of, does it cost us $500 a month at the City Hall parking lot? Does it $300 a month? I can't really convey that into kilowatt hours, but I'd be curious to know
Yes.
what those charges are, and I think that's probably a better starting point to figure it out.
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman. The DPW gets the bills for City Hall and for Shirley Avenue. So we can give you a per-month cost for each station or each bank of stations. The Hill School, that electricity is paid through the school department, so I wouldn't be able to give you that figure. But we can give you a spreadsheet, maybe with the last year, as to what the monthly charges for the City Hall and Shirley Ave are.
Great. I mean, I think what we gotta, we did set up a revolving fund for these EV stations. We haven't used it, but as part of, not this year's budget, last year's budget, we did create a revolving fund, and that's the mechanism that we can put revenue in and spend money out for the maintenance and the operation of the EV stations. So I would like to see us start to charge for these, and I would also like to see us enforce in those cases where people are parking there and not using the EV stations. And I'd like to see that money directed into that revolving fund, and, you know, maybe continue to pay the electricity charges through the general fund for now, just to see what type of data we can get on the actual cost of that, and then maybe adjust accordingly. But I, like Julie said, it's $1,400 if someone damages one of this. We don't have a funding source right now, and we got to start to realize some revenues here. So maybe next meeting we can invite ChargePoint in to give us a little demonstration on some of the ways they collect the money, and maybe they have some samples of what other communities are charging.
Mr. Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just some bullet points that I picked up while everybody was talking. When we talk a maximum of 2 hours charging, now, is there an automatic shut-off on these? Do we tell the machine you charge for 2 hours and shut down automatically?
No, so it doesn't just shut off. So like the way the EVs work, it will continue to charge for as long as your battery's taking the charge.
Okay.
So after 2 hours, if you decide you want to continue to charge, or you don't want to just go get your car, you're too busy, you're having, wherever it is, whatever you're doing while the car is charging, they'll continue to charge the electrical fee, the fee for the electricity, but then it will be 50 cents every hour after that. So or $5 for every hour after that. That's how you would set it. So you would make money, you would collect a fee. Once again, you would collect a fee on the electrical use that is dispensed, plus the overage of you being, so it's almost like being at the meter and getting charged a fine for overextending your time at the meter, but you would also get charged for the electricity that's being dispensed to your car.
So, but if you're saying it only charges you while the battery is asking for it,
Correct.
so when it's full,
Then it shuts off.
Right.
So, and I was kind of poking around with some of our EV users here that are employees, and, you know, and I said, well, you know, because I see multiple cars charging up like every other day. So I'm like, well, how long are you there really for? And, you know, usually just 2 hours, just enough to get me through the next day or what have you. And I think that's really all people need, is just the 2 hours, because the battery, supposedly in some of these vehicles, the battery regenerates itself. You know, if you step on the brake, it recharges itself. So, you know, I don't think we should be extending it any more than 2 hours, but we can collect a fee if we want to.
okay, that's good. I was going to ask about the overtime parking, but that was kind of answered. And, you know, I think we should, you know, review that and stress that down the road as we go along and see what happens. Now, does the charging station show how much electricity one person uses during their session?
Yeah, so I can look it up by, when I run the data off for the month, I can see each session, what time, how long they were there for, how much electricity was dispensed. I can also see their ID number. So not their license plate number, not their name, not where they're registered, none of that. But I can see a unique driver ID number. Now, a lot of times, it's, like this month when I ran the report, I had a lot of one ID number listed only once for that particular station, whatever I ran the report off. But then there was a couple that they were charging up 6, 7, 8 times for the month, that same number repeatedly, different days. So you can see who, based on the driver ID number, how many times they're charging up and how much electricity they're actually drawing from the city.
When do they get that ID number?
I think it comes with the vehicle, or it comes with the charge point account. But yeah, it's listed, it gives me a driver ID
Okay,
number.
no,
So
I-
like Zach's drivers, his employees that work directly under him and that are, they have their own key fobs, they have their own number. So they're all listed under one number. Engineering's listed under another number. The construction oversight vehicles, they have their own number. So I'm able to figure out who's who based off a combination of numbers just for the municipal users, and then the public, like I said.
Okay, thank you. Also, I agree that we shouldn't be subsidizing. The city, and I'll use this parking similar to water bills or other things that the city expends to the public. There's public usage of water in City Hall that nobody really pays for, and and we know there's a little increase put into the base rate, to offset some of these numbers that the city is using, because, that, we have to make make it up somehow. That's subsidizing if we didn't. So, I just think that, we should upcharge a little, on it. And I think that 10% is a good number. And I was just wondering whether or not, why we have different rates at the different groups around the city with the municipal lot and City Hall and Hill School, and I don't know if there's any in the other municipal lot up here, but,
So the rate for the Hill School is because it's actually tied directly right into the building.
Right.
So the meter is drawing right off of the buildings. Whatever the rate is for the building is what the EV charging rate is for those two stations. Now, for City Hall, we had to upgrade the cabinet, and then we also had to put in a new transformer up on Pleasant Street. So there was a cost associated with that, so they're passing it on in the kilowatt rate. For Shirley Avenue, there was no cabinet, and we had to install a brand-new service because we were, through the Mass Works Shirley Avenue grant, you were putting in lighting in that lot, and that got tacked on to that brand-new service. So, and that's really what they are basing the kilowatt hours on. I believe that National Grid is going to be, they're going to be implementing a new pricing model based off of demand use in time of day, but that has not been defined yet. I know Eversource has a different pricing model for their rate of kilowatts, and it does allow for a discounted rate for EV charging. But we don't have that just yet because we're all, the whole city's National Grid.
and with all this variable rates, is it worth doing a flat rate for everywhere?
I think it's probably better to do a flat rate because I think it's probably all going to even out in the end. I think the other thing we need to take a good look at is, so I'm just basing this off of the kilowatt rate. I don't know what else is on that bill. So I don't know if there's a transmission charge. I don't know if there's solar credits. I don't know if there's net metering credits. I don't really know what is actually on that bill that DPW gets per month for Shirley Avenue and for City Hall. I think it'd be good to take a look at it to see all of the additional charges that go into it, to make sure that we are pricing it accordingly.
And it's also similar to National Grid when they charge you in your house. They give all these different fees leading up to your bottom line. So, it would be wise for us to catch up with all those fees, because that's just another way of subsidizing. And I don't think so. I think it all should be added on to the bottom line.
And I think it's helpful to note, too, because I think when we were looking at bills 3 months ago, when I looked at what DPW was being charged for City Hall, and I looked at the energy we dispense based off of the kilowatt rate, the charge point estimate of what it was costing us to dispense the electricity was lower than what was on the bill that National Grid sent to the city. So there's some things we're missing, and I think we just need to take a good look at it and how we want to pass that on.
Thank you. Does anyone have any further comments?
I'll defer to Tom unless, no, I was just going to say I'd like to table this until the next meeting and invite the people from ChargePoint to come in for our next meeting and give us a little idea on how they charge in similar communities to get an idea what the pricing is. But in the meantime, I would just like to see if Paul can get us the information on the actual electricity bills coming in, but maybe prior to the meeting, we'll have a chance to look at that, analyze it, and come here with some numbers and maybe leave with a recommendation for the next meeting on some pricing models. But in the meantime, I just assume we table this until we get more information on the actual electricity charges that we are being assessed for using those stations, and then try to get ChargePoint in here to give us a little more detail on how it would work with regard to charging per kilowatt hour or whatever they base their charges on.
I think I would agree with that. And I want to say, Julie, thank you for putting this together and being able to go through all that again. And I think Richard made a valid point. I think getting our hands on the DPW bill to compare what ChargePoint has us as usage as and what we're actually being billed as, and get some more information from ChargePoint on how they're working with other communities to try to make this not a for-profit business, but something that can take care of itself over time and not be an extra cost to the community.
Yeah, and I also think it would be helpful for us to just put out a community survey, just to kind of understand what it is the EV users expect and need, I guess, in terms of charging. And, maybe that's, something that's built into the amenities of the parking district. It's just a thought.
Tom?
And that's something I'd like to have in advance of the next meeting as well. Even the 2-hour limit that we had discussed, I don't know if surveying City Hall employees is necessarily the best way to identify how residents in the neighborhoods around might utilize it differently, right? We might only need 2 hours because we're already here and we're just moving our car from one place to the next, whereas a resident might need it for a longer period of time in the evening hours when City Hall is cleared out, for example. So I think getting a good sense of what the community needs are as well, in addition to the City Hall employees, would be helpful.
Fair enough. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to open up to the public. We have a member of the public that would like to speak. Please name and address for the record.
It turned off. Is that back on? Anthony Pazziali, 51 Arcadia Street. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just wanted to ask about the efficiency of the system. I agree that the city shouldn't subsidize this, but the other day, maybe 2 weeks ago, my friend and I, we went to the Hill School and we sat in a Tesla for about an hour and it only charged 8%. So if we're going to charge people for the service should be efficient and worth paying for. Sitting there for an hour and only getting an 8% charge to me doesn't seem like it's a fair deal. But I mean, I don't know what, you guys kind of understand what I mean? If you're going to be there for, you would have had to sit there all day long to charge it. You know what I mean? And I don't know if there's any difference between a Tesla and other cars and what it takes to charge them. So I just want to make sure that the residents are getting what they pay for.
So all of our chargers are level 2 chargers, so it takes about 8 hours to get a full charge. Level 1 takes anywhere from 11 to 15 hours. The Tesla chargers, level 3, right, is they can charge up in a matter of 2 hours, a full battery. So it depends on the actual charger itself. We have all level 2s. We can look into getting level 1s in the future, but that is a much more expensive system.
Is it possible to look at the city records to see how many EVs we have registered with the city and try to match it up with the type of charging stations we're using? I'm only bringing it up as if we're going to charge people. If we're not going to charge people, doesn't matter to me. But I just want to make sure that if you're paying for something, we're a customer, that we get the best.
So we have asked for that data to see how many EV vehicles are registered with the city. I have not been able to get that from the assessor's office, but the study from Weston and Sampson, they're actually going to give us an estimate of number of vehicles, EVs that are registered here in the city. I don't know if it's going to break it out by Teslas, but we can ask. It's definitely worth the ask. But I think it'll be interesting to understand, how this is growing. I mean, I think the numbers presented on the spreadsheet shows that this has grown a lot faster than I think any of us anticipated. And I think it's going to continue to grow, especially with all the tax credits, with the different types of vehicles. I mean, it's just going to allow for, and why wouldn't you charge up for free when you can?
And then I would just add the level 3 chargers are like orders of magnitude more expensive, like let's say 10 times more expensive than the level 2, which is why generally you see level 2 as sort of the standard bearer for municipalities to have in their parking lots. But
I guess my concern would be if you're going to charge and it's not effective, then no one's going to use them. Kind of what you guys were talking about, to see whether or not people are going to use them. You're going to go and you're going to say, oh, I've been here for 2 hours and it cost me X amount of money and I got, 10%. Why would I use it? That's all.
I think there's got to be some comparisons. If you go to Tesla, I don't know what you're paying to charge a car in an hour, but it might take you 5 hours at this. So as long as they kind of come out to the same dollar amount, maybe it's $5 an hour down there, but maybe it'll only be $1 an hour here because it takes 5 times longer. But I think there's certainly a lot more information. And I think the other point, now that I'm hearing this, is I don't know if we should limit it to 2 hours. If you only get 8% charge after 2 hours, so it may be more based upon the, once you're done and you're maxed out, you can't just sit in that spot. So I think from an enforcement perspective, we have to look at that, where if there's a car that takes 7 hours to charge it fully, I don't mind it sitting there 7 hours if it's using it, but once it's maxed out and it sits there for 2 hours and doesn't allow someone else to come in and use the service, I think that's when we got to enforce that.
If I just want to clarify, I do love this. I'm not against it. I was just something that was my concern. So I don't want you guys to think I'm against this at all.
They're good. I have the same concerns as you, actually, because I don't think it makes a lot of sense to say you can only be there 2 hours, and that's like going to the gas station and getting 1/8 of a tank of gas. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense either.
But I just want to note, when I looked at the data from the different charging stations, all of our stations here in the city, the average time, or the average time is like an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's what we're equaling out to. So that's what I based it on. But I mean, we can certainly, maybe nighttime charging, you can stay for 3 hours, something like that, especially if you're relying on our EVs to charge up for the next day, you get a little longer time to charge up.
And to piggyback from the public input and what Julie had said, this has kind of been a rolling target. Last year we reviewed this, it was $550 charge a month, and all of a sudden we're coming back with a $2,900 bill. It moved very quickly, and I totally understand the public's comment of, you want to make it useful and you don't want to, you want to make it usable, 100%. But also, too, we have to try to nip this in the bud as soon as we can to make sure the city's not eating more and more of this costs. And as these things come damaged and we open up more to the public, one of the things that happened in the City Hall one, somebody forgot to unplug it, same as the gas station. They drove away with the handle stuck in their car, ripped it all off from the machine. That was an expensive repair. Luckily, it was under warranty at the time, but I think everyone made some valid points, and I think this is why we've been so cautious. This is the third time we've talked about this, and I think that's why everyone wants to get all their information in front, make sure it's worthwhile for all involved.
All right, so motion to table for next meeting and await some more information on electricity costs for those stations, as well as an invite to the SharePoint people for the next meeting.
Yes.
Second?
Second. So ordered. A little bit out of order today, but I would like to approval of the prior meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Hold on, I just wanted to report, and I did give you the report, but we do have nearly $30,000 in the account for the parking benefits district. We do have one expense out of there that was to, I believe, repair one of the EV stations, but we are starting to accumulate some dollars there. And I did want to, I don't know who the best person to do this was, but I'd like to make a motion that we can get a count of the tree pits in the areas of Shirley Ave and Broadway that have parking meters in that area. I don't, all of Broadway doesn't have parking meters, nor does Shirley Ave, but I'd like to see if maybe one of our PCOs or maybe our DPW can actually give us a count on the tree pits, and might want to do some research on trying to utilize some of these funds for beautification of those tree pits in those areas. Nothing formal yet, but just a count on those tree pits would be helpful for the next meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to get a count on all the tree pits in the Shirley Ave in the Broadway area where there are meters.
Second?
So ordered. Does anyone have anything else for tonight? I know it was kind of a lengthy discussion. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second. Thank you.